Before we start working with Entity Framework, let's just discuss what it is and what it does. Entity Framework is a so-called ORM, which stands for Object Relational Mapper. It allows us to map our properties in the objects to the database fields, and we can access and manipulate them without the need of writing directly any SQL statements. We definitely could use direct SQL statements, but it won't be necessary as Entity Framework allows us to work with link statements. Entity Framework Core only supports code-first approach. That means that we first need to create our domain classes, and those will be mapped to database tables. In previous versions, you could do it the other way around and create domain classes from already existing database. So we need to create domain classes first. Then we need to create database context class. This class is essential. It connects our application's code with the actual database. We will use database context for all access and data manipulation. It keeps track of all the data changes, and it is also responsible for persisting the data back to the database. Database context usually uses DB set properties for each entity it is exposing. DB sets tell the Entity Framework Core that there is a corresponding table in the database. Of course, to connect to the database, we will need a connection string. This string is typically placed in appsettings.json file, and we will need to make some changes to startup class as well and tell the application that we are now using Entity Framework Core. So that means we need to register corresponding services in the configure services method in the startup class. And finally, as the nature of .NET Core 3.0 is, we will need to bring in all the necessary packages, because these are not part of the app by default. Alright, so now let's work with Entity Framework Core.